From humble beginnings to global domination, the story of Airbnb is one of the ages. Brian and Joe, two guys with no business experience and an idea that seemed unlikely to succeed, turned their dream into a reality. Despite facing legal challenges and skepticism from the start, they persevered and created a platform that has changed the way we travel forever. Today, Airbnb is the largest accommodation provider in the world, all without owning a single piece of real estate. But how did they do it? Before we begin the video, I would greatly appreciate it if you would subscribe to Timeless Business, press the like button and turn on bell notifications. Now let's get started. The story of Airbnb's success begins with a simple idea born out of desperation. Brian and Joe were on the verge of getting evicted from their apartments and they were broke. However, they knew that a popular design conference was coming to town in a few weeks, which meant that thousands of people would be descending on the city and hotels would quickly fill up. With no other options, they came up with the idea of creating a bed and breakfast for the design conference. They had 3 Airbeds that they could blow up, and they figured they'd try to charge people to stay at their apartment for the weekend. They created a basic website called Airbed and Breakfast to advertise this using a free WordPress template. Unsurprisingly, almost nobody took them seriously. However, since the hotels did fill up as expected, Brian and Joe managed to get a few people to pay to stay with them, and weirdly, it was great. They showed their guests around the city, took them to their favorite restaurants, and everyone had a great time. Brian and Joe made around $1,000 from the 4-day conference, which was enough to pay their rent and give them some extra time to develop their real business idea. Airbed and Breakfast was not the big idea they thought it would be, but it paid the rent. Airbnb has come a long way from its humble beginnings. What started as a simple bed and breakfast service for a design conference has turned into a multi-billion-dollar company that has revolutionized the way people travel and stay in unfamiliar places. The company, which has distributed the traditional hotel industry and become a household name, was founded by Brian and Joe, whose hard work and determination have turned their simple idea into a global phenomenon. Despite initially experiencing success, Airbnb faced challenges in maintaining its momentum as the service was only used during major conferences and events. In order to make Airbnb a year-round service, the founders sought external investments from angel investors who provide funding in exchange for ownership in a company. However, the pitch for Airbnb was seen as risky due to the concept of allowing strangers to rent out space in homes and the small transaction fee in their business model. Despite being rejected by multiple investors, if someone had invested the $150,000 that Brian was seeking at the time, their investment would now be worth billions of dollars. Unfortunately, the potential of Airbnb was not recognized at the time. In an effort to keep their business afloat, Brian and Joe resorted to taking on credit card debt. Despite believing in the potential of their idea, it seemed that nobody else did. They had a service that nobody was using, and it would take something unlikely to save the company. In a desperate move, they decided to focus on the breakfast part of their bed and breakfast concept and created 2 limited edition cereal brands, Obama O's and Captain McCain's, to capitalize on the upcoming election. They found a printing shop that agreed to print 1,000 cereal boxes for free in exchange for a cut of the sales and purchased 1,000 boxes of cheap cereal to put in the designer packaging they created. Brian and Joe then spent hours hand-folding and hot-gluing the cereal boxes in their kitchen. Despite being a strange and seemingly unlikely way to save their business, the cereal gimmick actually worked. They sent some of the cereal boxes to journalists who wrote about them, and people started buying the boxes for high prices because they were seen as rare and collectible items. As a result, Brian and Joe gained national media attention and were even mentioned on CNN. However, the cereal had only been a short-term success, and people started asking if they were now a cereal company. Brian and Joe knew that they couldn't just keep making more cereal, and in fact, they still had some unsold boxes of Captain McCain's. They mostly lived off dry cereal for the next few months because they had no money to buy other food. Brian would wake up anxious every morning with his heart pounding, knowing that they needed money to help keep their business going. They heard that Y Combinator, a startup accelerator that invests in new companies and offers guidance from experienced entrepreneurs, was accepting applications. They eagerly applied and went in for an interview, but it did not go well. The interviewer asked why anyone would want to stay in a stranger's house or invite a stranger into their own house. As they were leaving, Joe handed the interviewer a box of Captain McCain's cereal, explaining the story of how they had made it to raise money and get out of debt. The interviewer was impressed by their out-of-the-box thinking and determination, and agreed to invest in Airbnb and help them make the business work. Brian and Joe were accepted into Y Combinator, and were able to pivot the business to focus on the Airbnb concept, which eventually became a massive success. Brian and Joe were struggling to keep the Airbnb business afloat when they were accepted into Y Combinator, a startup accelerator that invested in their company and provided guidance from experienced entrepreneurs. This was a turning point for Airbnb, as other investors also began investing in the company and they gained access to funding and expert help. The founders were thrilled that their business finally had a chance to succeed, though they had no idea that they were about to build one of the fastest growing startups in history. Before joining Y Combinator, Airbnb was limited in scope and was called Air Bed and Breakfast, allowing only hosts to rent out air mattresses and provide breakfast. However, after simplifying the name to Airbnb and removing these restrictions, the company saw a significant increase in demand. In addition to traditional rentals, Airbnb began to attract unique and unusual listings like treehouses, castles, and igloos, giving visitors a unique and authentic experience. One reason for the company's success was that they made the whole process more user-friendly by improving the design to look more professional and focusing on their review system to make the site feel more trustworthy. They also poached customers from their competitors by creating software to automatically email anyone who posted their property on Craigslist and asked them if they wanted to list it on Airbnb. The timing of Airbnb's launch was also perfect, as they started during the recession when more people were looking to make extra money by renting out spare space, and travelers wanted cheaper places to stay. Airbnb was able to match these two groups together and become a massive success, overcoming various challenges including regulatory and legal hurdles, as well as public skepticism and criticism along the way. Airbnb has made significant technical investments to improve the user experience, including the use of machine learning and artificial intelligence to match visitors with the most relevant listings based on their preferences and past bookings. The company has also developed a secure payment system to facilitate transactions between hosts and guests, eliminating the need for a middleman. The global network effects of Airbnb have contributed to its rapid expansion, as more hosts list their homes and more travelers use the platform, leading to increased demand. Airbnb's ability to expand into new markets without owning any property sets it apart from traditional businesses that face higher costs when entering new markets. Despite some concerns about safety and security, Airbnb has largely maintained the trust of its users, with only a few high-profile incidents. One such incident involved a freelancer named EJ who rented out her apartment on Airbnb while she was away on a trip. When she returned, she found that her home had been trashed and many of her possessions had been stolen or destroyed. EJ's story went viral and the backlash against Airbnb was significant. In response to the incident, Airbnb's CEO, Brian, took the unusual step of publicly apologizing and acknowledging the company's mistakes. He promised to do better in the future, and his honesty and transparency helped to repair Airbnb's reputation. Today, the company continues to thrive and grow thanks to its innovative technology and global network effects. Brian admitted that Airbnb had failed EJ and announced a $50,000 guarantee to protect hosts against damage, retroactive to include EJ's case. Brian also announced a 24-hour customer hotline and said that they were doubling customer support. These changes came at a high cost, but they were necessary for Airbnb's success and reputation. Unfortunately, as they were resolving the crisis, another issue arose: regulation. It turns out that renting out your home on a short-term basis through Airbnb was illegal in many places, and the laws could vary greatly from place to place. Airbnb worked with regulators in some places to find a solution, but it was not so simple in others. In New York, for example, Airbnb faced significant opposition and restrictions from the powerful hotel industry and hotel unions. In 2016, it became illegal to rent entire homes and apartments for short periods in Berlin. These are just a few of the challenges Airbnb has faced with regulation in different cities and countries. In some locations, Airbnb attempted to operate legally by collecting visitor taxes and following local ordinances. But in other cities, authorities and the hotel industry imposed regulations and opposed Airbnb, alleging that the company was operating unlawfully and stealing guests from traditional hotels. In addition, some locals in cities with high Airbnb usage claimed that the platform was driving up rent prices and removing homes from the market for long-term renters, as private landlords with multiple properties often made more money from short-term rentals on Airbnb than from long-term tenants. In response to these conflicts, Airbnb launched the Experiences Marketplace, which allows hosts with specific skills or expertise to offer unique travel experiences to guests, such as cooking classes, outdoor adventures, or cultural tours. However, despite the success of the Experiences Marketplace, Airbnb's expansion plans were disrupted by COVID-19, which forced businesses around the world to close and led to a significant decline in travel. As a result, Airbnb's bookings in Europe declined by 80%, and the company had to deal with a large number of cancellations and refund requests from guests. To address this issue, Airbnb created a $250 million fund to give to Airbnb hosts to help cover some of their lost revenue. But this move was met with some criticism from hosts who felt betrayed by the company's decision. It remains to be seen how Airbnb will adapt and recover in the post-pandemic world, or whether the company will be able to sustain its business model in the long term. Ultimately, Airbnb sided with guests and allowed cancellations for health and safety reasons. But this decision caused some hosts to feel betrayed and led to the creation of a $250 million fund to compensate hosts for their lost revenue. The pandemic also prompted Airbnb to pivot its focus to nearby travel and saw an increase in bookings for properties located near travelers. Despite this shift in focus, there are still concerns about the sustainability of Airbnb's business model. The company has yet to report an annual profit since it was founded 12 years ago, and there are warnings that it may never be profitable. Some wonder if the biggest problem for Airbnb is simply that its core business model may not be profitable, especially in the midst of a global pandemic where travel and staying in unfamiliar places may not be seen as safe or desirable. However, it is undeniable that Airbnb has had a rapid rise in success. It was founded by two guys who couldn't afford to pay their rent and has now become a giant global company. Its founders, Brian Chesky and Joe Gebaia, have even been recognized for their entrepreneurship, with Brian being named an ambassador of global entrepreneurship by Obama. The company has also managed to survive many challenges, from homes getting destroyed to legal battles to the global pandemic. Airbnb's rise to the top of the home sharing industry is a truly remarkable story. From its humble beginnings as a solution to the founders' financial struggles, to its current status as a global powerhouse, the company has overcome numerous challenges and setbacks. But its innovative technology and the global network effects of its platform have helped it achieve exponential growth and solidify its place as a market leader. In fact, very few companies have seen such rapid growth as Airbnb, and it's a testament to the perseverance and determination of founders Brian and Joe, who took a risky idea and turned it into a household name. If you're inspired by this modern-day rags-to-riches tale and want to stay up to date on all things business, be sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to Timeless Business. Don't forget to turn on the bell notifications to never miss a new upload. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.